Hi, everybody. I am Mary Stevens, and we're so excited that you're joining us tonight. We will also be very excited for all the people who join us for the recorded version. So we're trying something new this year. We're reviewing how to do the DSMIG USA lit review posters. I know this was one of the first activities I got involved in when I became a DSMIG USA member now many years ago. And it really helped me dive into the literature and learn so much. So we're excited to harness some energy and new talent and pair you with mentors and get going. Next slide, Emily. So for those of you not familiar with DSMIG USA, it's an amazing organization, mission listed. I am on the board, but I would say that regardless. It's been a huge help to me personally as the mom of a kiddo with Down syndrome, and professionally, it's been one of the most nurturing organizations I've ever been involved in. Next slide. So just some reminders for tonight. Your mic's automatically muted, and we ask during the presentation you stay muted. But there's going to be time at the end for live Q&A, or if you feel more comfortable, you can put your questions in the chat box. Bryn is going to be monitoring the chat. So if when we go through the list of available topics, something really hits your interest, or you just definitely want to sign up and say, I'll do whatever and pair me with ever, we've got you covered. Notes on how you can adjust your view. And then please, for technical assistance, do not reach out to me. I will be of no help, but the amazing Emily Perkins from Rayburn will guide you through this. So we have a group of us speaking today, really terrific colleagues from across the country. And I'm going to turn it over to Emily now for the start of our show. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Stevens. I'm coming to you from the DSMIG USA Adult Guideline Workgroup. We're thrilled you joined our webinar. And what we're going to do today is talk about the history of the DSMIG lit review process and poster sessions over the years. We're going to talk about its evolution and what we think is a pretty unique way to pair or connect individuals who are interested in learning more about care of individuals with Down syndrome and to get some scholarly activity out there, whether it's for your interview trail or promotion or just to help you learn more, and pair you with folks from DSMIG who bring that clinical lens to your work. So without further ado, let's get started. So as I said, I'm Mary Stevens. I'm a member of the work group. I'm the mom of a now 12-year-old as the day I'm recording this, kiddo with Down syndrome. I teach at Jefferson and run a DS consultation clinic at Christiana Care, and also a primary care medical home at Jeff for teens and adults with complex childhood onset conditions. Okay, so this process started well before I joined DSMIG, which has been almost a decade ago. So over time, the work group, through a process outlined in some of our papers, developed topics of importance about care of people with Down syndrome, and we're focusing on teen and adult populations here. These are the topics that have already been reviewed, and you can look on the soon-to-be new and improved DSMIG website to take a look at those, and we'll talk more about them later. So out of this exercise, members of the work group have completed a couple of reviews and gotten the information gleaned from the lit reviews out into the press and on PubMed. And importantly, I think, and we'll hear more from Bryn and Global later in the talk, but these reviews were helpful in informing the global adult guideline process, and also served as a way for DSMIG members to get further involved in that process. There's been other publication offshoots. Scoping reviews seem to be the thing lately, and we've had several of those, as well as a book chapter, come about as a result of the work done. There's still a couple unclaimed diagnosis reviews. We know there's been a recent review article completed on vision, and we'd love to see that turned into a poster. Also looking for folks who have interest in reviewing the literature on common dental and GU or renal diagnoses in Down syndrome. So say you're a med student or a resident, maybe you want to do a nephrology fellowship. You know, maybe you just think kidneys are cool. Think about claiming these topics. And so we recognize that we're almost done with the diagnosis reviews. And so we've moved on to special topics and then treatment reviews. So here are the list of what's been completed to date. And certainly any of us involved in those are happy to share our work. So now we're going to move on to other members of the team. George Capone is going to talk about the process for actually putting together a poster, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have an algorithm and you can just work with that. Andy is going to talk more about the mentorship process and what it's going to be like for you when you submit your poster to consideration for the poster committee. And just without stealing his punchline, our bottom line is if you're committed to doing a review, we will help you get that poster to the finish line. And that's a commitment we're making. And we'd love to see all these topics claimed this year. And then Bryn's going to talk about what is the potential to kind of have synergy with the global Down syndrome guidelines project and future projects. At the end of the webinar, we're going to come together for live Q&A if you're joining us on January 18th. If you're watching this recorded, that's great too. And we'll have contact information for our committee members. So thank you so much for taking this time out. We hope some of the topics interest you, and let's get this done. Have a great night, guys. I'll join you for Q&A.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is George Capone, and I'm going to cover some of the methodological issues for performing the treatment reviews. We haven't done too many of these in the past, and we're recommending that if you choose a topic which was already covered in a diagnostic review, that you take a look at that original document as a starting point, and that you make reference to the findings and to the authors who worked on it. What you're going to want to do with using the same mesh topic headings is perform a new search on PubMed. Remember, you're focusing on treatment and management issue. So you're going to probably pull up a lot of articles that are not relevant to that. For topics that have multiple treatment modalities, and we know that there are quite a few out there, feel free to narrow your scope on one or two, but probably not more than that. So for instance, with sleep apnea, you can focus on medical management, airway management, surgical management, and of course, hypoglossal nerve stimulator. So I would consider those to be separate reviews. You're going to want to formulate key questions to guide your review of the literature. And this is the same thing we did for the diagnostic reviews. as I mentioned, the condition that you're looking will be a mesh topic so that it casts a broad net throughout PubMed. You're also going to want to be familiar with what the United States Preventive Service Task Force recommends as standard treatment or management in the typical adult population. And then based on the literature that you've pulled, you might want to consider, are there any circumstances about having Down syndrome that might make these recommendations either not equivalent or at least maybe needing modification. So for instance, someone of very advanced age, someone who's very fragile, having lots of other comorbidities, or even factors like caretaker preference or ability of the caretaker to follow through, are extenuating factors, I think, that need to be at least considered in clinical decision making, maybe not in offering a treatment option to begin with. I guess another thing to pay attention to is, are these treatments available everywhere, or is it only at select centers? We're certainly in that situation with things like hypoglossal nerve stimulator, or maybe surgical approaches to certain issues, where it's done at some centers, but not all. And then, of course, you want to look at the treatment. Does it have an impact on morbidity and mortality? What are the harms? What are the costs? So the other thing we recommend as a first step in designing your PubMed strategy is you're going to combine your mesh topic based on your condition of interest with Down syndrome. And it turns out that Down syndrome as a mesh topic covers trisomy 21, mosaic Down syndrome, translocation Down syndrome, and I think it's a good enough term to use Down syndrome. You probably want to set your limits to be after 1970. I would even argue that we should go after 1990 or 2000. We're not looking for treatments literature from 50 years ago. So use your judgment there. I would pull articles that are particularly in English and involve human subjects over the age of 18. And what you do with the list of hits that you get from that is you look at the titles, you look at the abstract to see if it's got any relevance to any of those key questions that we mentioned in the last slide. Now, the prediction here is that most of the articles that come up are not going to be useful, and you're going to end up excluding them. Remember, you need at least one key question being addressed in that article. You want to include large case series over 10, any case control studies, or certainly a randomized clinical trial. But as we all know, those kinds of studies are in short supply. And I think they may be tough to find, especially randomized trials. You want to exclude articles that are only reviews or opinion, or case reports involving less than 5 to 10 subjects. But do make a note that the article exists, and we may end up using it in some way. And of course, you want to exclude pieces that are using outdated methodology or just not quantitative enough to be really useful. Your next step is to prepare an abstract, and you can work with your mentor as well as various members of the adult work group to help put the abstract together if you like, and we will provide instructions on doing so on the DSMIG website. Once the abstract is reviewed and you're hooked up with mentors, you can work on submitting a poster. Again, templates and instructions will be available over the website. Here's a new idea to consider. If the search yields nothing or is extremely limited in terms of giving us useful information to inform treatment decision, again, you want to go back to the US PSTF guidelines in the typical adult and kind of use your best judgment about what modifications might be considered for someone with Down syndrome. But what I think is really exciting is let's use this opportunity of a gap in information to develop a set of survey questions specifically inquiring about treatment and management, that we will design the questions. We'll get input from specialists as needed to make sure these questions are framed appropriately. And then we want to create a survey and send it to our colleagues in DSMIG and perhaps some of the specialists that we work with at our various hospitals and medical centers. So this could be part of a larger project to get people everywhere thinking about treatment decision making, even in the absence of literature to support treatment and decision making. No doubt we will have to form a subcommittee of this group to work on the survey, but that all sounds like fun to me. Another thing to consider when choosing a topic to do the review, it might be a good idea to be in sync with the guidelines that have been published by Global, as well as those guidelines which we'll be working on over the next couple years. So you can see the following topics listed on this slide are probably in need of some rigorous scrutiny of the literature regarding treatment. So I think this is a good place to start. Yes, we've done this to some degree with obesity and to some degree with atlantoaxial. But if you have a special interest in those topics, let us know, and maybe we'll put you in touch with the people who did this original therapeutic literature review. So yeah, we can find a place for anybody who has an interest and wants to do this. Okay, I'll just end right there and happy to take questions at the live Q&A. Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you for allowing me to participate in this panel. I think it's really exciting that we're starting to think about how can we as a community develop ideas of innovation and continue to work, not stay where we're at, but work forward and creating ideas in the care of individuals with Down syndrome. And so I just want to introduce myself real quick. I'm Andy McCormick. I am a MedPeds trained doc who works at the Down Syndrome Center in Western Pennsylvania, Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. I also run the Healthy Transitions program, where we help our young adults make that movement from pediatric to adult-oriented care. And I'm coming to you today because I'm also on the DSMIG Planning Committee and specifically function within the role of the poster committee, and I help chair that committee. And so today, my role is to really share with you kind of a little bit about the process, about how is a poster submitted and some of the nuts and bolts around that. So to get started, I want to talk about what we're going to talk briefly about in this talk. It's very kind of just a 5-minute introduction here. And I want to talk a little bit about our why. Why do we have a poster committee? Why are we making changes? And then a little bit about the nuts and bolts so that we can invite you in this process with us. So first, the why, right? So there's a couple whys and at different levels. So number one, why we have this poster committee as part of DSMIG is to share innovation. So often posters, right, are on the cutting edge. They're before all the data is there. They're often sharing ideas before they're kind of fully formed to be ready for publication. And so it's really the opportunity for us to share the cutting edge of innovation at every institution that we're at. And that innovation can look very differently. Innovation may be research, but innovation may also be about a patient that you cared for and lessons learned, some of the lessons that you learned, or it may be about a program that you set up. So when I developed the Healthy Transitions program at our institution, one of the first things I did was actually create a poster and share it at DSMIG about that process of what did transitional care look like at our institution. So there's different ways that we can share innovation. It's a way of having this collaboration. That's on this next level, I really think of this as an opportunity to develop the next generation. So for me, who is probably no longer a entry-level physician within the Down syndrome community, but somewhere in the middle, I really see the poster committee and the opportunity to share the work that we've done as a way to develop ideas, to develop some mentorship, to develop some leadership within my career. So I really think that as we ask people to partner with us in sharing their ideas to creating their posters, we really want to kind of invite people into our community, and not only invite them, but also have supported mentorship. So as you'll see, one of the innovations we're going to be talking about is a rolling submission, so that you don't have to wait till right before the deadline to submit, but can submit it as soon as today, because it's going to be open. And once that submission is in, we are going to be monitoring that on a weekly basis to see what abstracts have been submitted, and then hopefully help support and mentor those ideas so that we can have the best presentations and also develop relationships with people within our committee. So our committee is a combination of different people who have been within the Down syndrome community for a while, who will be reviewing abstracts, giving feedback, and then also can have supported mentorship if needed. And then the final thing is develop community. So DSMIG is going to be back in person this year. And so the poster presentation or the poster session is going to be in conjunction with our welcome ceremony. And it's going to be an opportunity for people not only to hear about your research, but also to meet you and to talk and to mingle, as well as you getting the opportunity to do that. This is really about you sharing your ideas, but also making connections. So our why is really rooted in this idea of sharing innovation, developing the next generation, and developing community. So let's get into the nuts and bolts. So really, what qualifies for a poster? And we really want to think about this broadly. So obviously it can be original research. So this can be bench research, this can be clinical research, this can be quality improvement, anything that would fit within the guise of original research. But also we have the opportunity to partner with our adult working group to have adult health reviews. Historically, you may not know this, and I know Dr. Capone has shared a little bit before me, and I'm sure he shared this story, but there was a collection of posters that were used over time to help develop some of the ideas around the adult healthcare guidelines. And so the continuation of having these adult health review posters is an opportunity for us as a community to reevaluate the literature and think about specific questions and how we're doing preventative and care for individuals with Down syndrome. So that's always been an important part of our poster committee. Case presentations, really important to think about what are unique situations, unique patients that you've cared for and experiences that you've learned and lessons learned, so that we can share those ideas as a community. And the final one, which I actually think is a really important one, is what we label as informational. What we're talking about is not, we see this many patients in our center, but really thinking about what are innovative ideas that you have, new curriculum, new clinical procedures and processes for your patients, innovative ideas that you can share what you're doing at your center, and then getting a chance to share that with our community so we can all learn from this. Like I said, this is how I had my entry level into DSMIG and the poster committee, was sharing about our Healthy Transitions program. And over time, that actually ended up leading to me doing a poster, which was original research around some of the care that we'd offered in our center. So you can see how this is a great way to develop some of your ideas over time. So nuts and bolts, really important. 2 important points. If you're going to be submitting a poster, it's really important that the primary author of that poster is present for the event. It's going to be an in-person event, as you can see in the background, in Orlando, Florida this year. The main conference day is on Friday, July 21st, but our welcome reception as well as our poster viewing will occur on Thursday, July 20th. This will be an in-person event where we'll get a chance to mingle and share ideas and talk about the work that you're doing. But another important part of this is that there's also going to be a mandatory submission of an e-poster with a video recording. The idea behind this is we're going to create a website platform that even before people go into the poster session, they have an opportunity to hear your spiel. It's going to be a 2 to 3 minute presentation that you describe your poster, so that individuals can not only read your abstract, but hear you talk briefly about your poster, and they can come in and have discussions with you in real time at your poster, hearing about what you're doing, and hopefully making some connections. So those are two really important things as you're thinking about your poster, both things that you have to do. It's not one or the other, it's both of these together. So just a little bit of the nuts and bolts of what this is going to be looking like. So in the last week, there was an email that went out that talked about the opportunity to submit an abstract. On that email, you'll see that there is a link for submission, and it takes you to a JOT form. That is now open, and this is a rolling submission. So as you submit, you will hopefully get feedback within 2 to 3 weeks about your abstract, any things that would be helpful to strengthen your abstract, as well as the process for submission if you're accepted. Abstracts are going to be 250 words. And like I said, they can fall under the topics of original research. They can fall under the topic of adult health review, case presentations, or an informational poster. Now, that rolling submission will have a close date. That will be on May 12th, 2023. That's about 2 months before our actual conference. And then your actual e-poster submission and video will be due 1 month before, so that we can put that together on our website. So what I'm going to do real quick as I'm closing out is I'm going to switch screens, and I'm going to show you the JOT form that you will click on so you can see it one time and just talk through it briefly. So I'm going to do a new share real quick. And what you can see here is the JOT form that you'll see when you get into that link. At the top of that form, it gives some really quick instructions that we already talked about the length of the abstract, how you will submit it. You want to submit it as a Word file that'll be attached later down this form, which I'll show you. And then eventually you will also have to submit your PowerPoint and video presentation for that e-portion as well. So you want to put whoever the primary author is, that's the person who will definitely be present doing the presentation, as well as contact information, and then label other authors who will be part of that submission. You want to identify what kind of poster you're submitting, either original research, adult health review, case presentation, informational. We have others, so if you feel like you don't fit one of those categories, it's fine to click that. These are really just headings to help us as a committee kind of get an idea of what kind of poster you're presenting and what kind of abstract you form, so that we can give you feedback how to strengthen it. Then you'll just click this browse file where you will be able to upload your Word file. Remember, you want to, how you want to identify it is put the name of your file, DSMIG 2023, 2 to 3 words of the title of your abstract, and your last name as the corresponding author, so the first author. And that's how you're going to save your file on your computer, and then upload that document as a Word file right here. Now, recognize we also have you, while you're in here, go ahead and click your consent form. You're basically consenting for us to upload your video presentation onto our website, as well as to have you part of our conference. And then you hit submit abstracts. So it's a really easy process, and we are really looking forward to you joining us in Orlando. And like I said, we want to hear about your innovation. We want to develop a system of mentorship, and we really want to create some community. So we hope that you would be excited to be involved in the poster committee. And I am going to be available to ask some questions after all of our presentations. So thank you guys so much for listening today.
Hello, everyone. This is Bryn Gilero. I'm happy to be here today. I'm the Senior Director of Research and Medical Care for the Global Down Syndrome Foundation. And in my work with Global, I manage many of the medical care resources, including our prenatal and newborn information about Down syndrome pamphlet, which is a collaboration with NDSC and NDSS. I also manage the COVID and Down syndrome resource consortium work, which was another national joint initiative in cooperation with 9 other national Down syndrome and IVD organizations, including DSMIG. And most notably for our conversation today, I manage the Global Adult Medical Care Guidelines for Adults with Down Syndrome work. So when looking at the 9 topic areas addressed in the first edition of the Global Adult Guideline, and I've got them listed on the top right here for reference, it's one possible starting place to consider review topics for the DSMIG literature reviews. And the good news is that when Global created the architecture for the guidelines, the goal of the work was really twofold. First, we wanted to create, of course, recommendations to support providers caring for people with Down syndrome. And second, we wanted to create a blueprint of future research work needed, and that future research was dictated by the many gaps in the literature search that we conducted. So the future research needs, as we called them, or key research priorities that we outlined for all 9 topics in the guideline. And of course, those are written by the guideline authors and contributors, almost all of whom are DSMIG members. I'd encourage DSMIG members to review the full text or the summary JAMA text to see if any of those research priorities match your areas of interest. I've included a link to both the full text and summary text here. And it's important to note that our work on the global guideline was mostly around comparative prevalence, etiology, and screening. We actually did not venture in to treatment and intervention. Really much more work is needed there to be able to create evidence-based strong guideline recommendations. So you'll notice that in the future research needs, you'll see a lot of future research needs in the areas of treatment and intervention. And of course, here's an example of just a few of the research priorities as outlined in the summary table in the JAMA article. So for example, you can see in thyroid disease, more research was needed on precise thyrotropin levels in Down syndrome. That was flagged as critical. And for cardiovascular disease, you can see that stroke prevention was highlighted as a future research need, and so on. So this is just a sampling. And again, this is pulled directly from the JAMA text, which is open access from Global's website. And I would encourage you again, though, to look at the full text where you'll actually be able to see the discussion around each of these future research need bullet points. We really had to simplify it down for the sake of the summary article. And then, of course, as we've mentioned before, the guidelines are, that was the first version of the guidelines. We are already in progress writing the research questions for the second version of the guidelines, the second update. And the next global guideline update will provide, not only will we cover the 9 previous topics, making sure that in the 5 years between that publication and this next publication, there were no important changes, but we will also be adding 5 new health topics to the global guideline. And those 5 topics are obstructive sleep apnea, solid tumor cancers, blood cancers, physical fitness, and vision and eye health. Now, I know that these were mostly covered in other slides as potential topics for DSMIG reviews already, or even some of these have been addressed in DSMIG literature reviews, but I wanted to share this slide so you can see where possible crossover work is being done or could be done, and how this work is all part of a pretty amazing feedback loop between the research and the care, and also between DSMIG and Global and the medical providers. And then I also just think, in addition to medical comorbidities and treatments and diagnosis of conditions, we can't overlook race and social determinants of health. And in the global guideline, we outlined in the introduction, a priority for the next update is really looking at racial discrepancies for adults with Down syndrome. And here global on a foundation level, in 2020, we established the DeAndre Dixon Down Syndrome Research Fund in loving memory of our fabulous ambassador, DeAndre Dixon. And the goal of that fund is specifically to address the disparity in lifespan for people with Down syndrome who are Black compared to people with Down syndrome who are white, which we know that lifespan for people with Down syndrome who are Black has been estimated to be in the mid-30s compared to 60s for people with Down syndrome who are white. So that's an incredibly tragic disparity. In addition, on a larger scale, you can see, the National Institute of Minority Health and Health Disparities is now one of the institutes of the Trans NIH model funding Down syndrome research, the INCLUDE project. And this is a vastly under-researched topic. And within minority groups like disabilities, sometimes we overlook that group is not a monolith. And the stats on lifespan and infant survival rate are really stark reminders that all people with Down syndrome are not accessing care equally. And this is just one other way that a literature review could connect to not only global needs, not only to DSMIG's literature review needs, but also to the global guidelines and to the NIH funding priorities.
Okay, so I think at this point, we're going to move to live Q&A. So George, if you could put your video on. Andy, if you're out there, please put your video on. There's going to be a few housekeeping slides at the end, so stay tuned for those. I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, but we have a couple of folks who have already expressed interest in topics. So let me just kind of round out and say that, again, what I started off with, we're committed to get you to the finish line. We're still working out the process, but what we will likely do is we will send an email out to all of you who attended tonight with our slides so you can see the topics. And if you could just shoot us back a quick email to say, hey, I'm interested in this specifically, or I'm interested in this, and that. I think I can mentor in this area, or I would love to do this, but I need a mentor for this. We will make those connections. We'll find you the mentor. We have lots of folks from DSMIG who weren't on this call. A lot of the regular DSMIG members attend the conference, so we can get that poster represented. We we want to make it happen. We would love for you all to be there, but we know as students and residents and perhaps young faculty, you don't have the control over your schedule. You will one day, and July can be kind of tough, but we'll figure out how to make it work. Tonight's group is to really do some matchmaking for the health lit review posters, but Andy did a phenomenal job of really sharing all the possibilities. And if one of those is your jam, we will support you in your jam and find a way to help if you need it. I'd say, having submitted several posters over the years, it's really a formative process and great feedback, and it makes you think harder. There was a question that came up really quickly in the chat. So yes, Lizzie, when we send out the email, do respond to that. But Bryn, for the record, let's have Lizzie Kamenoff, if I'm saying that correctly, for renal, and Carrie Rogers has expressed interest in regression. Just so you know, we have several work groups at DSMIG. There is a regression work group, and if you become a member, we can help you connect with those folks. So other housekeeping points before we open it to questions from any of my teammates here.
I have a quick question for Carrie and for Lizzie. Are you interested in doing literature reviews on those areas or interested in mentoring in those areas?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my name is Carrie Rogers. I am trained curriculum education, educational technology. And since my postdoc, I have completely retrained looking at regression because I came into contact with a family that went undiagnosed for 16 years. And I have literally flown to Orlando for the last week and a half. We've done 18 appointments trying to get everything together so that hopefully I would love to present this case because it's a very interesting case. The individual is actually over there somewhere, may hear in the background. And so I've been doing research on regression, but also how do we do visual supports with adults with Down syndrome, severe ID, limited to no functional communication, and how do we justify what we're doing to families? Because I try to bridge the gap between research and praxis. So I'm very much looking for mentoring, but I'm also looking for, assistance as to how to guide this family because 16 years they went with nothing. And they will be at the conference.
Great, thank you.
I would be interested in doing literature review, and I would want a mentor to help me with that.
Perfect.
Other folks who want to introduce themselves or share some ideas that they want to work on? I just want to send a shout out to some of my Jeff peeps whose names I recognize. Thanks for coming tonight.
This is George. What do people think of the idea of constructing a survey that we could circulate within our Down syndrome community and beyond, which would allow us to tap into kind of real-time decision-making by the people who are in the trenches doing it, who are probably too busy to write a paper about it. And it might be a quicker and more interesting way to collect information.
If I could jump in, I'm not trying to hog the mic. I'm very interested, especially looking at this from the family experience.
Right.
What have they been through? What have they tried, et cetera, especially when I believe fewer than 2% of all adults with Down syndrome have access to a Down syndrome clinic.
Right.
And so thinking about what is of interest to these adults, what are they capable of doing, especially those that are on the more severe range, rather than, how can we make life more inclusive for them? Because most of them are still living in the home and researching what do families need from us, both medically and therapeutically, clinically, but also interacting in the community.
Yeah. Have you been to a DSMIG meeting or a Down syndrome Congress meeting?
No, I have applied for my application I submitted back in December. I am awaiting to hear the results of that, but I do hope to present. Submitted to present at the convention itself.
Okay. Yeah, I think attending these conferences will open and expand your horizons.
That's what I'm hoping
very,
for.
very quickly when you see the kinds of things that are in place to support families and individuals. I mean, a lot of people have been working very hard on this now into a second or third generation within some families who are leading this charge. And so I think a lot of your your questions will be, I think, addressed, and you'll come away with 20 more.
That's my goal. I love research.
Yeah.
Survey
So,
design, I'm very interested in working with.
good.
Hey, George, when you talk about using surveys for rare disorders that there's just not enough data on, I mean, there's already identified methodology. So like the modified Adelphi method could be like a methodology we could use like in a group of experts
Right.
on a topic. And then, you just do these sequential surveys to get down to expert. And, it's actually not that difficult. I've used it in some other areas. So I practice in vascular anomalies, which is also rare disorder. And we use that for some things where we just don't have data for, and you can come up with some very good consensus. So that might be a great method. I like the idea because sometimes you just can't get data otherwise.
Right.
A validated way of getting expert consensus. So that might be I think that's a great way of doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I was exposed to it with the paper that Jonathan Santoro led, and that was my first time using that methodology, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we could even do it at DSMIG, right? And you could do it in a way that instead of like, I did that with Jonathan too, and that was a little bit more like you're doing these emails and giving answers. But if you do it in person at a conference, you could do it more rapidly and get some good information quickly.
And I'll just say that that's something that with all of you who were involved with the global adult guidelines, it's something that we used quite a bit, is the focus group with families and reviewing questions to make sure that they were family friendly and appropriate. And so we'd be happy to also support and collaborate on that initiative. That'd be wonderful to get the advocacy organization perspective to help get that out. Yeah. And I think I saw Hannah trying to say something, so I'll hand it over to you, Hannah.
Hi, well, I just wanted to introduce myself, say hello. My name is Hannah Graham. I'm a family medicine physician and I work at the Adult Down Syndrome Center in Park Ridge, Illinois. I started there about a year ago, a little over a year ago now. I have a 3-year-old daughter with Down syndrome, and I'm just really excited that you guys put this together because I'm looking forward to the opportunity to have some mentoring in this area. I will say there were a couple of topics that I was interested in, so I'm not ready to sign up yet. I have to like stew over a little bit and send an email in. But definitely a couple of the topics I was interested in. I've already done some lit reviews on treatments and there was nada. So I'm excited that maybe some mentors can help me sort through some of these things and contribute to some of the gaps in knowledge that we're all facing. So I just wanted to say hi. I will send some emails and thank you for putting this together.
Nice to meet you.
Other folks want to jump in?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you all hear me? Yeah, my name's Nick Bean. My older brother Christopher has Down syndrome. He just turned 30. And my mom, Dr. Laura Siffer-Bean, has worked, for over 20 years as a primary care pediatrician for everybody in Northeast Ohio, but specifically with the niche of caring for individuals with Down syndrome and other developmental disabilities. So that's kind of the world I've been raised in. I grew up going to the NDSC conventions, and many of your faces are very familiar. So it's good to see you all again. Currently a second-year medical student, and I've just started some conversations with my mentors at the University of Toledo in building a kind of program to have standardized patient interactions with individuals with Down syndrome acting as the standardized patients, and then hopefully branching out into other areas of individuals with disabilities. But I was wondering if that kind of thrust would fit into the informational section in posters, and if there would be space in the DSMIG conversation for kind of that sort of idea.
So Nick, I think that is a fantastic idea. I mean, I think the idea of, how do you do system change, right? You have to change people early in their educational stream. And I'm presuming you're using this you can train medical students, you could train nursing students, you could train, providers as well.
like all across the spectrum. But I think using the methodology of standardized patients, you could do it informationally. And then after you use that data for a while, you could quickly move on to showing, through med-ed kind of research that you're attaining specific goals and achieving those. And that could be actually original research as well. But I think if you're at the early phase of like, we're developing this, that would be a really great opportunity to share that informationally. So
I just want to add, Nick, so that's really awesome. What you're doing. Jefferson was one of the schools funded through the National Curriculum Initiative in Developmental Medicine. So we've really placed an emphasis on our curriculum. We've done a lens analysis of our curriculum, and standardized patients have come up. And while our standardized patient center is very interested in the topic, they're anxious, right? Because they've never worked with patients with intellectual disabilities. So I think, already, just you bringing up this topic, if you have a poster, there's going to be other university and community centers that reach out and say, hey, can we partner? Maybe we'll develop 2 scripts, you develop 2 scripts, and we can, really test them out and break down the barriers. I've done other work with simulation, and the initial thought was, well, we can get somebody to play somebody with a disability or an intellectual disability. And I was like, no. They're like, what about IRB? I was like, no, that's not going to be a barrier. So I think it's stuff like that. I spoke to some medical students today, and I was like, you guys have grown up in a much more inclusive and unified community than many of us on this call have, who are, as Andy said, not newbies anymore. And so I think you guys also bring a different perspective, and love this idea. And I'm sure we can get folks at Jeff to partner with you. And I'm friends with your mom on Facebook, and I have no idea how that happened, but she's really cool. Good to meet you.
She was really excited that I was doing this call.
That's great.
But yeah, again, the very, very early stages, just conversations with my mentors. But my brother is involved with a standardized placement program at NeoMed, Northeast Ohio Medical School. And he's kind of serving as a sounding board for ideas and a point of first contact as they build their program. So that, gave me the idea to maybe I could expand that and start something similar at Toledo. So that's exciting that would also provide an opportunity for this. Thank you.
I actually had a question that Nicholas just made me think about, but so I'm a first year medical student at Jefferson, and we have to do a scholarly inquiry project, and I'm on the medical education track, and my project as of now is going to be making pediatric offices in Center City more sensory friendly. And I'm wondering I don't know if that would work here, because I don't know if this is just like adult centered, but it's essentially what they've done this with an ophthalmology clinic before, the team has, and they essentially made a manual on how to make the ophthalmology clinic more sensory friendly. And then they had social stories that were written, and they sent patients and their families home with like a whole social story, a little mini like eye practice, like I don't know what they're called, like otoscopes, I guess, to like go through the social story. And then I would make the same manual for physical exams in pediatric offices. But I don't know if that would actually work here, it
would work. But you can still do renal too. But yeah, so the health review guidelines have been teen and adult focused, but that would certainly fit into informational. And I think many of us would love to see that. And I think there's probably a lot of the times the stuff we do in the adult world, we model from the pediatric world, and because that works depending on the developmental level of our individual. So I think that's awesome. And I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, and I'll just also say that when you are submitting to the DSMIG poster, this is specifically thinking about adult healthcare. When you submit to DSMIG posters, it's across the whole age range for people with Down syndrome. And I'll point back to what George said earlier. The nice thing about this is it'll be great for you to share what you're doing with innovation, but we have some amazing partners within, where there's a bunch of physicians up here, but there's a lot of other, health professionals. We have the president of DSMIG is a occupational therapist, and she's an expert on sensory. And so there will be a great chance for you to cross-pollinate with what other people are doing, and maybe even, share what you're doing, but also get a chance to kind of talk to other people and learn some things that might also expand your program. So I think that's the beauty of the poster, is you share your ideas, but you also develop new ideas just by the interaction you have with other individuals that are at that conference.
All right, so it's 7:57, so I'm going to ask Emily to throw up those last closing slides so I don't forget anything. I just want to say thanks on behalf of the team. You all have exceeded our expectations by attending tonight. And we're so glad you're here. Lizzie, send me an email at Jeff, and maybe we can figure out how you can do both posters. So we'll get it done. So if you enjoyed today's program, share it with your colleagues and trainees. Keep an eye out on our website for more webinars. Really think about becoming a DSMIG member. We'd love to have more students and trainees on board. The fees are really reasonable, and there are some scholarship programs available. You can also donate if you are able, and that's cool too. So save the date. We will hope to see many of you in Orlando. I think the committee's working out still if there will be some hybrid components to the meeting or recordings. But remember, it happens every year. So if you can't make it this year, it doesn't mean you can't put it on your wish list for the next year. And without further ado, we're going to close, although Emily, if you can keep things open, some folks may feel more comfortable asking questions in a smaller group. Those of us on the East Coast are probably starving and want dinner, so we'll reach out to all of you. But this is awesome, and thank you.